Take it from this Benjamin. It's not about the Benjamins. The reason the people of America support Israel is not because they want our money. It's because they share our values. They just don't get it. It's because America and Israel share a love of freedom and democracy. It's because we cherish individual rights and the rule of law.
It's not about the Benjamins, said Benjamin Netanyahu, who that was aired a couple of days ago at AIPAC. Let's bring in John James, former Army veteran, former Republican running for Senate in the great state of Michigan. He joins us live. Clearly that was a shot at freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Yes, and deservedly. I think that America can see there's certainly a double standard when it comes to Republicans. Rep. Steve King was rightly stripped of his committee assignments because of his hateful remarks supporting white nationalism. I believe equally so Nancy Pelosi needs to exert the leadership that she purports and strip Representative Omar.
Yeah, but 600 progressives wrote her letters and said you can't crack down on her.
Well, you know what? That's the thing. Nancy Pelosi is afraid of the progressive left taking over, and she's kowtowing to them.
Well, you know what's interesting? She did speak out yesterday and said, in our democratic society, we should become legitimate debate on how to best honor our values and advance our priorities without questioning loyalty or patriotism. But she says she'll never allow anyone to make Israel a wedge issue. And she says that to be anti-Semitic is to be anti-American.
Well, see, I agree with Nancy Pelosi that being anti-Semitic is anti-American. You know, there must be no public space between the United States and Israel. They're a vital ally, and they're consistent on our democratic and moral values, and to allow that to continue is like a fly in the ointment for America, and wedges us from our allies.
I know as a veteran you served our country. We wanted to ask you about this story because a lot of our viewers are upset about it. There was a bride that posted her situation on Reddit. She wrote, "The son of one of my husband's family friends showed up to my wedding in his Marines formal wear, complete with all his medals. Now I have nothing against anyone in the military, but this was a black tie optional wedding, and frankly it felt very out of place, and it seemed like he was just trying to show off. My wedding had over 300 guests, and nobody else felt the need to wear something to make them stand out." What's your reaction?
Well, my initial reaction was, this is ridiculous. But then, very quickly, I think back to the men who I led, and a lot of them are junior enlisted. Now, I don't know the details about this Marine's personal life, but black tie optional tuxes, he may not have had the money or the resources. So his military uniform might have been the best that he had. And you're telling me that at a 300-person wedding you couldn't find somebody who might have had a suit, a tie, a jacket, some pants, but you also set the dress code. Hook this guy up, let him in. This tells me that there might be something else at play. Usually the tie goes to the bride, but in this particular case, I think it might have been able to handle differently.
What do you mean there might be something else at play? Are you talking about cultural reaction to seeing the uniform?
Well, I don't know their personal background. There's a lot of details we don't know, but I'm personally proud of my uniform. But as a matter of courtesy, for both sides, I think that if you're at the point with all those options to dismiss someone, I think there may be more information, but usually the tie goes to the bride, but in this case, let the man wear his uniform.
There's a story in Afghanistan, in the New York Times today about Afghanistan. The Taliban 5 are in on the negotiations for peace in Afghanistan and our exit. What's your reaction?
We've been at war for almost 2 decades. The first generation, there's a generation right now who's going to be voting for the very first time in 2020 who knows only war. I believe that taking any measure to come to a peaceful resolution, to bring our boys and girls back home, and to begin rebuilding America, that's where our priority should be.
But do you think that if we have to go back there in 5 years because we let it become a terror haven again, we have to leave responsibly?
Oh, of course. We have to make sure that we do it correctly, which places the onus on us to make sure we never go into war foolishly and hastily. Our founding fathers put that on us to make sure that we don't do that. But yes, we need to make sure that we get out in a measured, a responsible manner, pragmatic manner, and make sure that we have allies around the world that will help keep the area, the region safe and accountable.
Does it bother you the Taliban 5 are at the negotiating table with us to win exchange for Boberto?
Well, you know, we need to leave old wounds behind us the best we can, exercise forgiveness as we've done in previous years with Japan, South Korea, and Germany. We have to heal and move on so that we can focus more on the future than on the past.
Well, you're going to be moving on to a couch down there on the studio floor. You're hosting Outnumbered today. You're one lucky guy. John James, thank you very much.
He just had a baby 6 weeks ago.
One lucky dad.
You had one chance to get some sleep, and then we asked you to come on Fox and Friends. So thank you for waking up early.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on baby number 3.
Thank you.
3 boys.
We'll be watching.
Well, the New York Times editorial board slamming Democrats and admitting not all the president's budget proposals are bad. Even his Medicare cuts. Quote, the indiscriminate attacks by Senate Democrats are a reminder of how hard it's become for Congress to perform even the most basic kinds of prudent housekeeping in the public interest. So here with more is Fox News medical contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
Love
Thanks
having you with
me.
us as always. Let's take a look specifically at some of the cuts that we're talking about as we begin our conversation. President Trump's 2020 budget health care proposal, it includes cuts of $1.5 trillion over a decade for Medicaid, cuts $818 billion over a decade for Medicare, a 12% decrease in HHS discretionary funding. So lots of folks saying, this kind of goes against some of the things the president promised.
Let me tell you, I applaud the New York Times editorial board here because I was pleasantly surprised to see this because they're taking this at a pragmatic approach. They're not getting caught up in these headlines. Yes, during the campaign trail, President Trump did say he's not going to be cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So is he going back on that? Well, nothing in his proposal takes away benefits from the elderly, and that's what people are getting stuck on.
Important to point out,
Very
yes.
important. But by the way, the biggest losers here are doctors and hospitals, so I should be the one upset, okay?
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that the proposal is not taking away benefits from our elderly. What it is doing, shifting around a lot of money. Really, he's only cutting 500 plus million funds from Medicare. It's not that 800 number that they're projecting. But what it is doing is it's getting rid of waste. And tight Medicare spending is good government. And he knows he needs to decrease health care costs. And that's what he's doing. We see him doing that with drug prices and other means and helping out the opioid crisis. So this just goes along his fiscal conservative policy. And for the Democrats to, sandblast that's just them being irresponsible. They want to expand coverage to everyone, but you can't do that on a program that's already on an unsustainable path. He's reeling in those prices. And I'm optimistic. I'm happy about this. For me, I'm really curious to see what these cuts look like when it comes to physician payments and hospital payments. But I like that he's not taking anything away from our elderly, our Medicare recipients.
So the person or the group that people should maybe be angry with are Democrats who are trying to maybe make it seem like the president is taking away those benefits from the elderly.
Well, of course, that's what they're always doing. It's always makes it good. It's all politics. It's for 2020. They want health care when it comes to that election. What they're not understanding is, or what they are understanding is, and they want to hide, is that President Trump is really trying to make a positive dent in health care. And he is trying to take the Republican side and avoid socialized medicine.
Right.
And so this is the first step.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Obamacare. Democrats now, they're waging this new war against President Trump's plan to kill Obamacare once and for all altogether. So how will this end?
Well, again, the saga continues when it comes to the Affordable Care Act. And all of these little things that President Trump keeps doing, ultimately what he's trying to prepare for is the Republican plan, where he's working on the repeal. The DOJ upholding the unconstitutional aspect of the ACA would be him repealing the Affordable Care Act. But he needs that second half. He needs a replacement, whether it's with Graham Cassidy's amendment, who knows. But so he's working to repeal it, to strip away some of the parts of the Affordable Care Act that has really made it the Unaffordable Care Act.
Do you think that he would abolish it and repeal it altogether, which is another thing the Democrats are warning, saying, he's going to do this and all the people dependent on health care, Obamacare right now, will be left with nothing?
Well, look at everything else he's doing. He's trying to lower health care prices so that it does become more affordable, so that when he repeals the Affordable Care Act, he will be able to implement something in place. Yes, you're going to have a lot of people upset if you just take away Medicaid and the subsidies. So what is he doing? He's trying to lessen health care costs, and he's trying to bring back coverage in different forms, whether it's block granting, really giving it to state, coming up with catastrophic plans. He's trying to lower costs and get rid of the parts of the Affordable Care Act that people don't like without taking away coverage. So stop getting held up in all these crazy media headlines, and let's just see what he's working on.
Yeah, and we'll just have you more often on to explain it to everybody.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This might shock you, but it's a no-go on the Green New Deal. Senate Republicans voted unanimously against the plan, and while most Democrats just simply voted present to protest Mitch McConnell's attempt to get the Dems on the record regarding this controversial resolution. Now, this as the woman behind the plan, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, flips out after Republicans call the plan elitist.
The Green New Deal is one that if you're a rich liberal from maybe New York or California, it sounds great because you can afford to retrofit your home or build a new home that has a zero emissions, that's energy efficient, affordable, and safe.
You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist? Tell that to the kids in the South Bronx, which are suffering from the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country.
Well, we brought him back. Republican strategist Ford O'Connell and Democratic strategist Danielle McLaughlin. All right, Ford, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that if the apocalypse was upon us and the world was going to end in 12 years, and guess what? Senate Democrats would have voted for this instead of actually force Senate Democrats to join the Republicans. Zero of them voted for it. This is a luxury issue because, yes, we all do care about the environment, but if you don't have a job and you can't eat, frankly, it's not at the top of your scale, and we have far more pressing problems in America. And when it comes to the U.S., CO2 emissions reduction, we've reduced 16% since 2000. That is the most in the industrialized world. We are doing more than anyone else when you throw in China, India, and Russia.
Danielle?
This is exactly about poverty, actually. You think about what AOC talks about with kids in the Bronx. You think about the children in Flint who don't have clean water. Right. You go out 10 years, you go out 5...
But this climate change bill, how does that change that for them?
What this bill does, it's a little bit kitchen sink, admittedly, but they are talking about making sure that we have infrastructure, making sure that we have clean jobs, making sure that we don't have coal tailings going into rivers in places like Kentucky, so that people who are working and living in those places actually can live healthily, breathe the air, drink the water. That matters.
I think that we all agree to some extent pollution does hurt the environment. Here's where the Republicans have a problem. What the Democrats are selling, particularly through the Green New Deal, is pixie dust. You're talking about the biggest restructuring of the American economy in the history of this country. And essentially, if we do everything the Democrats suggest and don't go fully bankrupt in the process, guess what? It's not going to change the worldwide environment. It's only going to kneecap us in terms of competing with the rest of the world.
But Democrats have an idea. What are Republicans doing? Absolutely nothing. They're talking about the market, but the market is
driving down carbon emissions in this country.
That's not exactly true. We have tariffs on China. We have solar panels that are meant to be coming in here. I mean, that's a problem.
I'd say what you got to look at is our CO2 emissions as a percentage of our GDP. It's gone down almost 50% in the last 20 years. I mean, we have done some great things. I don't think we get credit for it. But here's my problem with AOC, and I want you to answer this for me. I was born in Harlem. And I have relatives in the South Bronx. I bet I spend more time in the South Bronx than she does. You know, this has been an issue for a long time, but they've studied it. They said one of the problems is because these are poor folks. They have dust-loaded furniture and carpets. They don't have the proper cleaning equipment. They can't visit doctors. Another report found that cockroach and mouse allergens are really the most common problem. And then there was another report that says these households have significantly more people smoking in them than others. So how is that something that all taxpayers should pay for? In other words, you know, whenever the Democrats have an issue and then they bring race into it, either directly or indirectly, as you know, it bothers me because we should be dealing with this, but this has nothing to do with her plan.
I don't agree with you, Charles. That one of the things with the Green New Deal is the idea that we would have a $15 minimum wage, that we don't have working poor in this country. That's one place where the market's not doing its job. People aren't moving out of these places with $15 minimum wage, and I pray one day that Democrats stop telling black people the best they could aspire to is higher minimum wage. It's the worst oxymoron in the world. $15 ain't what I want any black person to make. Start telling black people you want them to make $100 an hour, and then I'll cross the line. But there are poor whites as well, right? We have people in Appalachia, but they're not making enough to live.
I'm just saying, when you start telling me that someone's going to get out of these conditions with $15 an hour, it's not true.